info. She is talking about ghosts hanging around what some say is a real-life haunted house in Metro Detroit.
Haunted houses pop up all over the place this time of year.
A new Wall Street Journal report profiles the many parents who think they can see ghosts, specters, and mysterious movements on their advanced baby monitors.
Baby crib.
I freaked out. I stopped what I was doing and I ran upstairs and I grabbed my daughter.
Heather says this so-called ghost scratched her daughter Lily and attacked her too.
You are tuned in to the Ghost Signal. Hello, dear listeners, spirits, and specters, and welcome to the Ghost Signal. My name is Jeff, and I will be your control operator for this particular excursion into the shadows. This is episode 14, Malvern Manor, in which we travel to Malvern, Iowa to visit a 150-year-old building that stands as a memorial to times long past. The Ghost Signal has a website, theghostsignalpodcast.com, where you can find the latest episode ready to stream at your leisure. You will also find a merch store if you like to shop. There's also links to the Ghost Signal Discord server and Patreon if you would like to check those out. You can also email me directly at theghostsignalpodcast@gmail.com if you've got some spooky stories to share. The past few episodes have all been one long dead air segment, so this time there will be a shorter dead air and a few stories for the graveyard shift. Gotta change it up sometimes. Just a few miles to the southeast of Omaha lies the town of Malvern, population 1,153. It's a quiet place in rural Iowa that you're most likely to drive past, then stop by to visit C&M's Cafe for a burger and a sundae. But if you do get a bite to eat there, and by the way I recommend you do, the food is quite good, you might not realize that you're sitting right next door to Malvern Manor. Prepare for dead air.
Dead air.
The building now known as Malvern Manor originated as a home built by Captain Cullers in 1870. 20 years later, in 1890, the home was purchased by an investment group who added rooms and turned it into the Cottage Hotel. With a train line that runs through town, there were many business people and travelers who needed a quality place to hang their hats for a night or two, and the Cottage Hotel was the place to be. It gained a reputation for being very friendly and hospitable, and for years the hotel flourished. But the inevitable march of progress would eventually come to rural Iowa. In the 1930s, the automobile had surpassed trains as the most popular way for Americans to travel long distances, and the Cottage Hotel's fate was sealed. The new highways ran along the river to Omaha instead, leaving Malvern and other small train stop towns in the dust. So the building changed hands and changed purpose, to a convalescent home, then to a minimum care facility. It was often the last refuge for those suffering from alcoholism, drug addictions, and severe behavioral disorders. In the 1960s, it was converted into an assisted living facility for the elderly and the infirm. Due to the hallways not being wide enough to accommodate a moving hospital bed, the state pulled the owner's license, and in 2005 its doors were shut for good. And there it sat at the far end of Main Street, a relic of Malvern's hopeful past. Eventually, the house wound up in the hands of Josh Hurd, a documentary filmmaker and a paranormal investigator along with some other like-minded individuals, and it now exists solely for the purpose of ghost hunting. Its most famous exposure came in February of 2017 when Nick and Katrina from a show called Paranormal Lockdown filmed a 72-hour stay in the manor and captured some pretty compelling evidence. Recently, a connection between it and the Villisca axe murder house has been theorized, in which it's thought that the Moore murders were plotted by a vagrant staying at the Cottage Hotel, aka Malvern Manor. Since then, many investigators have come to test their skills here. A few famous faces have come, but mostly it's groups from nearby Omaha, Des Moines, and Kansas City. The consensus is that there are 5 main spirits that make their presence known the most. There's Inez, the little girl who died under mysterious circumstances, Gracie, who suffered from dissociative identity disorder or split personalities, a strange shadow person with a terrifying habit, the man who built the place, Captain Colors, and even a haunted doll named Rose. But above all these, there is an entity referred to only as Number 1, who dwells on the 2nd floor and is a uniquely terrifying presence. So let me introduce you to the cast of characters here and share their stories. First up is Inez Gibson, and her legend is just as tragic as it is mysterious. On December 21st, 1900, Inez and her brother Otto were playing in the front yard of their uncle's home in Malvern, as they usually did. Inez tells her younger brother that she wanted to go inside to play. He told Inez that he would follow her up in a few minutes. So off she skipped with her jump rope and went up to the 2nd floor playroom, presumably to play where it was warm. About 10 minutes after she went inside, Otto followed suit. When he walked into the playroom, he was greeted by a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his days. His sister was in the closet, hanging by the neck with her own jump rope. Poor little Otto tried to free her, but he was just too small to help. So he ran as fast as he could to his aunt and uncle's store to get help. But when they got back to her, it was too late. She was gone. Nobody else was in the house, and her death was listed as accidental. Somehow. So this begs the question, why does little Inez, who probably never stepped foot at the Cottage Hotel, have a room there that to this day is called Inez's room? The leading theory is that the house she actually died in no longer stands, and that Malvern Manor acts as sort of a beacon for the dead. As it was originally a hotel for the living, so do the spirits stay there now. Up next on our list is Gracie. She was a patient here in the 1960s when the manor was serving as a care facility. She had what is now known as dissociative identity disorder, but back then nobody knew what the hell that was. She was reported to have 13 personalities in all. Not much is known about the fate of Gracie, but it's presumed that she passed away while she was a resident here. An interesting theory surrounding her has been presented recently, however. If she had 13 distinctly unique personalities, would all 13 of those be haunting the manor as individual entities? We just don't know enough about how all this paranormal stuff works just yet to say one way or the other, but it is quite the hypothesis. Next up is the Shadow Man of room number 2, just past the nurse's station on the 1st floor. The room itself is being used as a private storage room and is padlocked to keep sticky fingers out. As Josh Hurd describes it, a shadow person walks through the locked door, sees whoever is there, and rushes right at them, disappearing just as it gets close. The experience has sent more than a few ghost hunters sprinting out of the house, and I can't say I blame them. Josh said it happened to him 3 times in 2018, although now that number has surely climbed. Johnny Hauser, caretaker of the Villisca axe murder house and a good friend of Josh, has experienced this as well. The prevailing theory comes from an actual former caregiver who worked in the manor years ago, who told the story of a man who was a patient in room number 2 who was so mean that when the nurses came to do bed checks on him, he would chase them out of his room. So the activity is pretty much on brand for him. Next we have Captain Colors himself. He is known to be one of the most active haunters in the manor, and kind of the stereotypical grumpy old man ghost. It's thought that he just doesn't like all the ghost hunters coming and going as they please with all of their gizmos and gadgets stampeding all over the place. He likes to push people from behind when they go up to the 2nd floor, and has been known to scratch people, especially women who go into the parlor room, which in post-Civil War America was a room where ladies were not permitted in the evenings when the men were in. One day, out of the blue, Josh received a phone call from a woman who had visited the manor on several different occasions. She told him that she had recently come into possession of a doll that she suspected had a spirit attached to it, and since he was the only paranormal investigator she knew personally, that she wanted him to take it from her. He excitedly agreed to take the doll named Rose, and the first night he had her, he put her in a Tupperware container and left her in his office. When he returned to the manor a few days later, he noticed that the Tupperware container was empty and the lid was across the room. Josh was flummoxed. Nobody had been there since he left, so how could this have happened? After a short search of the building, he found her sitting in the middle of the hallway that leads to the nursing wing. After this, he decided that a little bit more security was in order. He had his grandfather build a glass box for her with a well-fitting lid. I'm getting Annabelle vibes here, just saying. Although she has yet to escape, she still likes to rock back and forth when no one is looking. But curiously, when Josh acquired Rose, he may have acquired something else as well, something that only comes across in EVP and Spirit Box sessions. A male entity known only as Number 1. He is especially strong on the second floor and delivers quite aggressive and abusive messages to those who are listening. In Josh's own words, he's kind of a dick. There are other spirits wandering the halls as well, those that are much less frequently experienced, and some that may never be heard from again, having moved on to the next town down the line. The website is malvernmanor.weebly.com. That's malvernmanor.weebly.com, and is currently open for day tours and overnight investigations. I've never been to the manor myself, but hopefully that will change soon as 3 AM Paranormal plans a visit there in the upcoming year. Now, dear listeners, I give to you not just one, not two, but 3 true stories of the macabre from across the internet. Get ready to put in some overtime on this edition of The Graveyard Shift. This story is from Robert F., and it's titled, Someone Sent Text Messages as Me While I Slept. Last night I fell asleep around 10 o'clock p.m. When I was asleep, people were receiving odd text messages from me. Here is one from 10:36 p.m. that was sent in a group chat of my former classmates. And it's a bunch of French words, and I'm not even going to attempt it. I don't speak French. But using the built-in translate feature on iMessage, I was able to translate it to the following. I believe that I have lost everything that makes me human, not in the sense that I ascended above the mortal plane, but in the sense that I descended under demons. While I am taking French in school, I am not fluent enough in it to have written this. While looking through my other text messages, I found more creepy quotes. The following is a list of quotations from a longer message that was sent to an old friend around 10:20 p.m. 1. I didn't have any reason to do what I did, but I did it anyway. I'm not going to hide that. 2. I know this probably makes you think of me as a sick monster, and I don't disagree with that assessment. 3. Before you think this is a plea for sympathy, remember that would do me no good. What use would it be? It is the disease of not listening that I am troubled with. And of what use would someone giving me sympathy be if I don't allow myself to listen to what they have to say? Though I may be in madness, there is method to it. The third quotation from the longer text message contains 2 parts that are similar to 2 Shakespeare quotes. I am not sure as to why they are in there. I recognize them because I'm a fan of Shakespeare, but I normally wouldn't include quotes in my messages, so it makes me think even more that I didn't write these. I am scared. I don't know how these messages were sent or who sent them. I don't know what's going on. I mean, sleepwalking and sleep talking are things. Maybe since a whole generation of people have grown up with cell phones and texting, maybe it's just another version of that. Maybe. The next story comes to us from Boggy85, and it's called, Ever Since I Moved Into My Home, There Has Been a Random Blue Knob. When I moved into my home 8 years ago, I knew the original owner raised his family here. He also passed away here in my master bedroom. Since the first year in my home, this random ceramic blue with a butterfly closet knob has appeared in random places throughout my home. The strangest of all the years of the mystery knob was this past fall. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went away for a romantic getaway with my husband to Ithaca, New York in August of 2021. We were only gone 6 days. Before I left, I made sure to put the mystery knob that randomly appeared on my bedside shelf into the entertainment stand drawer in our room. I like to experiment with the knob when I go out of town. Upon our return, I picked up my dogs and headed home. We were all happy to be together again and were relishing in that joy. I looked up onto my shelf, and there was the knob I placed in a drawer 6 days prior. It was in a different place this time. Instead of sitting on the shelf, it was in this moose sculpture's antlers I have placed there. Chills immediately ran through me. I do not believe Mr. Blanchfield, the deceased original owner, has ill intent or is malicious in any way. It's still very creepy nonetheless. It shifted directions a month later, as the knob is one to do. It moved from right to left of the antlers. We were again going out of town in October of 2021. We were going to South Carolina for 2 weeks. This time, I decided to get very drastic with the knob. I took it to my mother-in-law's house 5 miles away and told no one my intent. I hid it in the attic of her home, where I know she never goes because she can't climb the ladder. I knew my experiment would be intact if I told no one and hid it. We came home 15 days later. I was exhausted from driving, so I didn't pay any mind to my experiment. When I woke up the next morning, I looked over to my dresser and there was the knob. It was sitting right on my dresser facing me. There was no way anyone knew what I did. How did it get back here? I threw it back in the entertainment stand drawer and tried to forget. A month later, it reappeared in my sock drawer. I hid it at my father's home 10 miles away with no one knowing, but it came back, this time in a pants pocket that was hanging in my closet. 2 months ago, I placed it at a friend's home 16 miles away. I didn't tell her my intent once again, and placed it in her extra bedroom closet. Now I come home a day ago, and it has literally appeared on my roof by my bedroom. What a weird story. I don't even know where to start with that one. A haunted closet doorknob? The next story comes to us from Smokin' Bunny, and it is called The Shadow Man. When I was younger, about the age of 6, I was sleeping in my mom's bed because I was too scared to sleep on my own. But one night, in the middle of the night, I had woken up out of nowhere. I was looking around the room, and then my eyes looked at the edge of my mom's bed, and I saw a figure that was darker than the pitch black of the room. I started to say, "Dad," because I thought my dad had arrived home from his trip out of state, and I was trying to get out of bed to hug what I thought was my dad. Then the figure started moving out of the room. I chased the figure, still thinking it was my dad, and it went into the living room where the TV was on and I could still see it. But soon after I chased it into the living room, it vanished through the door inside of the living room. The door didn't open, it was shut the entire time, and I watched the figure go outside and into the woods where I tried to follow it. But then my mom had woken up and got me before I went outside. My dad was still thousands of miles away and didn't come home until a week later. Kids just really do the darndest things, don't they? Like try and follow strange figures into the woods in the middle of the night. Never happened to you? Me either. And that wraps up episode 14, dear listeners. Thanks for tuning in. I really do appreciate it very much. Visit the website, theghostsignalpodcast.com, to drop me a line, get into the Discord server, or check out the Ghost Signal Patreon. The Ghost Signal is executively produced by Jason Wilson. Patreon by Brooks Bigley. Creative direction by Cassie. Custom sound beds by J.M. Scherf. Video editing by Hale. And I'm your ghost host with the most, Control Operator Jeff. Next time on the Ghost Signal is the story of Sabrina Haskins and her new home in the small but growing town of Jackson Hill, somewhere in the southwestern United States. Until then, dear listeners, ending transmission. Reach me at theghostsignalpodcast@gmail.com.
This has been a Grey Rooms production. Copyright 2021 and 2022.
The ghost signal is lost. Transmission terminated.